Imagine discovering the world's most beloved drink thanks to some very hyper goats. This is where coffee's wild journey begins. Stick around as we share the story.
Hey John, did you know coffee started with goats?
Yeah, coffee did start with goats. There was this Ethiopian goat herder named Kaldi, and he noticed when his goats ate the berries or the cherries off of this particular tree that they would just frolic and dance everywhere, and they had all kinds of extra energy, and that they couldn't sleep at night. And so he was sharing this information with the local abbot at the local monastery because, he wanted some help with that. And the abbot got to thinking, I'm having a hard time staying awake for midnight prayers. And as anybody who's ever fell asleep in church knows, coffee helps. So the monks started consuming those coffee cherries and beans.
How did it go from berries to brew?
Well, I don't know exactly, and we could do a video on that and all the speculations and stories around it, but basically the coffee cherries don't taste as good as, say, other types of cherries. And so the monks, or somebody that they traded or did business with, probably the monks, figured out that you could take the little beans out of that, and the coffee beans aren't really beans, they're seeds from that coffee cherry, and roast them and grind them and then steep them in hot water to extract the good flavors and the coffee. And so it got that way, and eventually the monks started doing business with other people, and coffee spread a little bit.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how coffee spread?
So the monks had this delicious drink, and they probably started selling it, or at least it spread to people in Turkey and Persia and other parts of the world. And all of a sudden, there were these Turkish and Persian little market areas where people would get together and drink coffee, and they actually, would share stories and watch plays and share poetry and music and have political discussions. And they became known as wisdom schools in the ancient Middle East.
Now wait, you mean coffee houses didn't start in Seattle in the 1950s?
No, coffee houses have been around a long time. In fact, when coffee spread to Europe, they actually did the same thing and had those same style coffee houses from the Middle East in Europe. And they called them penny universities because you could buy a cup of coffee for a penny and get an education from some local scholar or poet or something like that. In fact, coffee houses in ancient Europe actually became specialized. There were ones for actors and people performing plays, ones for people performing music, ones for people in various different businesses and industries. And the world famous Lloyd's of London insurance company actually started out of Lloyd's Coffee House in the United Kingdom in London.
How did Syd get in the coffee business?
Well, Syd Vegas was born, or I don't know, maybe he was hatched 113 million years ago on the planet Hunka Hunka Burning Love. Now, Syd always wanted to be an Elvis impersonator, even before there was an Elvis. Don't ask me to explain it, it's a really complex anomaly in the space-time continuum. But anyway, as Syd tells the story, he was flying his spaceship over the Roswell, New Mexico area in 1947 when came up on a bald eagle, and out of respect for the United States of America, he swerved to miss the bald eagle and accidentally crashed into a flock of wild turkeys, which brought down his spaceship.
Knowing what I know about Syd, I believe the wild turkey part.
Well, anyway, Syd did crash, and he ended up living inside of Area 51, where the government has given him lots of special projects, but his favorite project is roasting coffee at his top secret coffee roasting facility. Now, there are rumors out there that the United States Space Force and all of our spacecraft and satellites are fueled by a special top secret blend of Syd's Eagle Espresso, which was his first coffee he invented, and a combination of that with wild turkey, but that's top secret classified, so I can't confirm or deny. What I can confirm is that Syd roasts out of this world good coffee to order. And what I mean when I say roasted to order, I mean if you order coffee from Syd Vegas's online store today, he roasts it tomorrow and ships it direct to you within 48 hours. So you get the freshest coffee in the world.
I heard people used to drink beer and wine for breakfast.
Yeah, before coffee came along, people drank beer and wine for breakfast in pretty much all of Europe. And as you can imagine, beer and wine is not really conducive to having you be productive and effective at work. And somebody probably noticed when they started drinking coffee for breakfast that there were a lot fewer deaths from farm injuries, and people in carpentry shops cut off a lot less fingers and things. And so coffee became increasingly popular as a breakfast drink.
I also heard the church had some problems with coffee. Can you explain that?
So yeah, even though coffee was first brewed by Christian monks and then it spread to Muslims in those wisdom schools in Turkey and Persia, when it made it to Venice, Italy, apparently there were some people who were kind of like Bobby Boucher's mom from the Adam Sandler movie The Waterboy, and they said, "Oh, that coffee, it's of the devil." And so Pope Clement VII, who I guess popes have to test things themselves to see if they're of the devil or not, he tried out coffee and liked it so much that he gave his approval.
I wonder how the Pope drank his coffee.
Not sure if he used cream or a French press or an Italian roast. That'd be interesting to discover. Who knows? So that's how coffee became approved for all religions. Well, except maybe modern Mormons, although I've been to some really good coffee houses in Utah. And so,
Okay, let's talk about America. How did coffee become a thing after the Boston Tea Party?
well, there was a little bit of coffee drank and consumed in the 13 original colonies. It probably came here from French traders and Dutch traders, but tea was still the most popular drink until King George III put a 2% tax, and that was considered a huge, enormous, unacceptable tax. So the American colonists staged the Boston Tea Party, where they threw a shipload of tea into Boston Harbor, and then starting what Americans still do today, boycotting products, they boycotted tea and started drinking coffee, which made it the breakfast beverage of choice in the United States, still unto today.
Hey, John, on average, how many cups of coffee do Americans normally consume?
You know, there are over 1 billion cups of coffee consumed every day in the world, and Americans drink, on average, 3 cups per person per day.
Moving to Brazil, how did coffee become a massive industry there?
Well, to tell you how coffee got to Brazil, we got to go all the way back to France. Somebody gave King Louis XIV a coffee tree, and he liked the look of it apparently, so he had it planted in the National Garden, and it grew, and Louis XIV tried coffee, and he liked it, so they started producing other trees and then turned that into a business, and the French took coffee to their colonies in Asia, like Indonesia and Bali and Malaysia and Vietnam, where coffee has become a huge industry. And then they decided to send it to the Caribbean, to Martinique. And they sent one little coffee seedling to Martinique, and it's a miracle that it survived. There were terrible storms, and the ship almost crashed and was battered. They survived a pirate attack, and even one of the Frenchmen on the ship tried to sabotage that coffee tree, that little small coffee plant. So by the time they got to Martinique, they didn't think it would survive, but it did by some miracle. And by the time of the U.S. Revolutionary War, there were over 18 million coffee trees on the island of Martinique. And then from there to Brazil, well, that's a little bit of a more interesting story.
I hear it involves some romance.
Yeah, so the French took coffee from Martinique to their other colonies in South and Central America, like French Guiana. And the Dutch and Portuguese, of course, wanted coffee for themselves as well. They'd like to have some coffee trees. And so the Portuguese sent a naval officer to French Guiana to ask the governor there for some coffee plants. And he said no. The French wanted to keep it. It was a big cash crop and a moneymaker and business for them. And they wanted to keep it. But apparently this Portuguese naval commander was kind of the James Bond of ancient Portugal. He was charming and handsome, and so the French governor's wife gave him a bouquet of flowers as he was leaving without any coffee, and she slipped a couple of handfuls of coffee beans into that bouquet. He took them to Brazil, where today it's become, those few handfuls of coffee beans have become a $1 billion a year industry in Brazil and made Brazil the #1 coffee exporter in the world.
Hey, maybe that's why people say coffee is for lovers.
You know, it is an aphrodisiac.
Now let's fast forward to today. How did we go from boiling coffee to percolators to cold brew and all these different fancy places we have today?
Coffee's so good, have so many health benefits, and people love it and enjoy it and have come up with new ways to roast it, grind it, brew it, from boiling it and filtering out the grounds to percolators to the drip machines to AeroPresses to pour over to more and more all the time. And fancy coffee houses just like those original wisdom schools and penny universities have always been places where people get together to talk and enjoy music and consume good coffee. And I think we'll continue to experiment. The latest trend is what Syd Vegas does, of course, which is fresh roasting coffee to order, because it's so much better that way. And Syd, of course, will continue to grow this trend and promote coffee by traveling the universe, both known and unknown, finding the best beans, using his top secret Area 51 alien technology to roast those beans fresh to order and get them to you.
Okay, John, enough talk about coffee. I want my own bag. How do I go ahead and get it?
You go to the Syd Vegas Shopify store. We'll put a link in the video description. And when I say fresh roasted and delivered to you, I mean exactly that. And it's always delivered completely free. We're really transparent there, no hidden charges.
If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it.
And of course, subscribe to the channel. Put your comments in the comment section on questions you have, things you'd like to know, videos you'd like us to do on coffee. And of course, check out this video on the screen now and Syd's amazing coffee store.